Oh, BTS.
Yeah.
I do know about it.
Oh, it's been trained, used it, taught it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. Where did you do training?
Through BTS, BTS came to us and picked people.
In
to
Lansing?
School
Oh,
District.
that's cool.
Yeah, I did 6, 7 years of that.
That's awesome. Okay.
Hard not get to work with him.
I said on the end, no, I'm working with him.
Collaborate. Yeah, that's the word.
Most teachers call it cheating.
Exactly.
He's just copying notes.
Yes.
It's not for a grade, it doesn't count.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yes.
This is Mike, do you have a pencil sharpener in this place?
It's hanging
They
on
have
the
this thing on
wall.
the wall?
Oh, hey, look at that.
Not my pencil on it.
You're right though, Mr. Reeves, it's new.
All the patterns and discover them.
It's in an awkward place too, you know, right where like the end.
Oh, this is a good one.
It's brand new,
Oh, I didn't break it
and
yet.
I've had to be here 23 years.
Okay. I will just take you through one more verbal explanation of the schema that we've been talking about, and then we're going to use it in a moment with the text that I just gave you. All right, so in order to read well, I had a really good black marker that I put somewhere.
I know the marker's in here, I seriously doubt you did a really good job.
Oh, this one's been great, and your board erases so well. Okay, so maximal literacy
Steve, we have to
skills
share.
depend on a person taking in written symbols, translating them into spoken language, which doesn't necessarily mean speaking, but it means activating the spoken language part of their brain, and then creating a picture in their mind, some sort of graphic organizer, or something more like a movie, mental representation, in order to read. That is kind of like, or it is exactly decoding plus using listening comprehension skills. Receiving lots of input this way allows for production of output the other way. So once you've listened a lot, you're able to speak, compose. We haven't talked about encoding at all today, but you learn to be able to write things down as part of the writing process, which is the output that comes, that is better the more reading input you have. All right, questions about this? The bottom part is kind of the code, and the top part is the comp. Okay, we're going to read the first paragraph in this handout that I just gave you. So on the side that says, what is visualization? As we're reading that, what is visualization paragraph, actually, I'll just let you read it to yourself at first. I want you to think about how the words in that paragraph are related to this schema. What part of this would I be pointing to in order to explain this first paragraph? All right, so go ahead and read it and think about that.
I need one.
Oh, he stole it.
Just saying.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay.
So he stole it.
I didn't have, my stuff is right here, here's mine.
Where's the kids?
What is visualization?
So just read that first paragraph, think about how it relates to the schema on the board.
You too quiet.
I'm gonna use words like visceral, I don't know.
All right, so what part of this model up here would I probably be pointing to as I say, visualization is the process of creating or forming mental images while reading or listening to a text?
Listening composition.
Exactly. So visualization is the process of creating or forming these mental representations while reading or listening, just doing the top part, to a text. These images or pictures, where does that fall?
Visual. The mental, yeah.
Yep. These images or pictures are drawn from the content of the student's past experiences and can encompass all of the senses. So it's all of that stuff that fed into the mental representations, if you remember the diagrams from earlier today. All the sensory information that goes in the folder with mama, all the things. They are visceral impressions in the mind over sights, sounds, tastes, textures, smells, and emotions. Pictures or mental images help make a connection between the student's inner world and the external world of the various forms of communication. So between the mental representations they already have there and the external world, which they are learning about by listening or reading, of the various forms of communication. So listening to somebody or reading, including reading, listening, speaking, and writing. So if we continue to read this, you can continue to use this, but the point is, what is visual? I'm trying to go faster than I planned. So I'm not going to have you read the rest of this, but it's really worth reading later on. But what is visualization? Do you have enough of an idea from that paragraph?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have to have a picture in front of you to visualize? No, in fact you don't. It's the creation of your own mental image based on words, other ideas that are being fed to you. Yes?
Have you ever heard and seen the museum without pictures? It's an outdoor museum, indoor museum. All it is a poem written on a card. And it's in New York. It's all over the place now. It's going all over the place. People just write a phrase. Actually, I wanted to work with some people on this one next year. You make a phrase, a descriptive phrase, and then you go there and you make up your own artwork within reading it.
Awesome.
Is that what I told you about?
Huh? Yeah.
So thank you.
It's
That
spending a
is-
lot of
that's-
money for weird stuff.
Oh, yeah, yes, of course it's gonna.
we can charge for this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna try it next year though, either with Ms. Murphy or Mrs. Pike. Somebody draws a picture and then I'm gonna send it to them, and then within creative writing, they get to write a poem, put the poem over it, and then flip it over to see if that's
Like
the same image you
illustrations.
got.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for years in my house. You can come over and this is like the unclean dishes section. Art, the laundry.
You got the
the
labels and
laundry.
everything?
You
What's
mean the
that?
section
Is that
you're in
labeled
charge
and
of, Keith?
everything?
What's labeled? Well, you gotta pay for, you gotta get all labeling.
Through the door.
And we don't like to label those dishes as dirty either, because they get a stigma. I'm not a dirty dish, I'm kind of a clean dish.
I'm so glad you joined us.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so visualizing.
I just visualized Keith's house.
Not even a dish.
I'm going to draw an analogy now for you. Before with note-taking and with this whole process, with note-taking, you can take notes from language that's just being spoken to you, what you're listening to, or what you're reading, from this whole process or just from the listening. Which one is easier to start with? If you're learning to take notes, is it easier to start from listening or the whole reading? The whole reading process, yes. Why?
Because you're just moving the information from, that's already been written for you, you're moving it
Yes.
to another point.
You're condensing to a smaller amount, but you're using concrete input. It's something you can touch and return to. So, similarly with visualizing, what this goes on to say is that visualizing doesn't come naturally to everybody. Somebody in here and I were talking about that already, that even if you're able to visualize when you're listening, when you're reading, you may not be able to visualize. This is a characteristic of many, many readers. So if you naturally do that, it's hard for you to imagine how somebody could possibly actually read without picturing it in their mind. And if you don't naturally do it, it's hard for you to imagine how people do that without, how people do it at all, especially without instruction. So, the process of learning to visualize while you read, which is really the basis of all the other reading comprehension strategies, can be taught, similarly to how note-taking can be taught, step by step, using concrete visual images. So just as we can use concrete text to learn to take notes. We can use concrete visual images to learn to visualize what you later read or listen to. The way this works is by looking at an image, which you'll do in a moment, look for details, make observations, draw conclusions about what's going on in that image or what the point of it is. Though that drawing of conclusions is making an inference, which is the most difficult part of reading in general. So it's learning that skill of making an observation and taking what you already know in order to figure out what the author or the artist really intended to tell you. So it's a concrete way of helping people be able to make inferences while they read and do lots of other reading related things. Yes?
I hate to be picky, but how do I do that with the square root of -1?
Well, observing
Which I was
the
thought, by the way,
diagrams in the
imaginary
math
numbers.
book, so somebody brought up earlier today, students not looking at pictures, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, not looking at the pictures in the text and not using them when they are there for the purpose of helping them understand the text. So you can start with just those. And your textbook may have online additional images that you can access easily. I'm going to email a bunch of these to Doug, but I also have just a list of links of visual images that can be used for all different subjects. But it's also, this is something that's been studied a lot. This is the visual thinking strategies that Mr. Art, what's your name again?
Ron.
enough.
Ron. Ron.
Art Cross.
Okay,
That's
I'm
the best.
sorry.
I'm calling you
Master of art.
I like Mr.
Hey, Artie.
I like it.
Just change
Makes you Mr. Math.
I have a problem that I didn't ask for your names at the beginning. Usually names are, my students know this, they're so important to me, so I'm sorry. But I'm gonna keep rushing ahead instead of doing it right now also. Do it at the end. So you can start with the visual images right for your own class if you have them that are relevant. But also, there has been plenty of research on this kind of approach and the knowledge, the skills transfer. So if you use images that are just art, or you use rocks that you bring in, or you use something else, the point is, you're helping students learn to observe details, pay attention to relationships, and make inferences. You're just helping them learn critical thinking, but you happen to be using something concrete, and that transfers.
I think with math, for myself, I visualize the problem and the solution in my head. Isn't that part of?
Do you visualize it as a picture or as the mathematical things that need to be written
To
out?
me, it is a
Dirty
picture.
dishes, so.
Square root of 144.
Keep talking about that while I pass this out, or while I pass out the next thing.
So I usually visualize in various colors, like rainbow. But when it's math,
Rainbow
it's
isn't
usually
all
black or white
colors.
when it's math, because it's
Just to
math.
be
No,
clear.
these kind of things are so cool.
Yeah.
Say that again. You're aware of this. Lots of people aren't aware of this kind of thing in their own mind.
Yeah. No. But still, you know, they all.
He has no idea what he just said.
No, I'm probably being sarcastic. So that's what they're thinking, he's full of it, but
Are you being
I don't
sarcastic?
think that,
I was,
I don't think that.
see,
Probably.
I thought you were.
I don't visualize in color, no, my mind's, black and white.
Transform this conversation.
Unless it's a negative number, then it's red.
We're gonna start calling you Mr. Jim.
Mr. Art's friend.
Mr. Art's friend, Mr. Jim. Not with a J, it's with a G.
How does it with the
Jim with a G.
Let's give the floor to Dan.
Oh, no. So I don't think this is a random question. Can you read faster than you can speak?
Yes.
Because I actually hear the words in my head when I'm reading, and my kid, it bugs me because he can read faster than I can.
Well-
Because they've worked on all this dibbles and all this other stuff for a while, they're working on reading speed, and now I'm seeing the actual results of that in terms of he doesn't have to take as long to gather, I don't know if his comprehension is as good.
So there is a good chance that in order to understand more complex text later, he will need to retrain himself to slow down. Because So there's this, there's this level that people have to get to in terms of reading fast enough that they're able to know what they read at the beginning of the sentence by the time they get to the end of a long sentence. If your reading is so slow that you can't do that very well, then it causes comprehension deficits. But once people reach that level that their reading is fast enough that they're able to maintain memory of the text as they're reading, then getting faster doesn't necessarily help comprehension. Because what you need to do is form a really vivid mental image with as much detail as you can, keep constantly reanalyzing it, comparing it to what you read before, predicting what you're expecting to come, connecting to previous knowledge. So if you're doing that, your reading isn't going to be the top speed that reading can be. So maximal speed isn't necessarily the fastest possible for reading.
So do you have any opinions on all this timed reading testing?
Yes.
No, I'm actually very curious. So I've had some debates with some people about the value of the dibbles and all this stuff. And I get the multi-tiered systems of intervention, and if the kid's down below this level, we do need to intervene.
Yes.
If they're way too slow.
Yes.
But now it becomes a contest to see how fast we can read stuff, which I think is a problem.
We'll do a math equation.
Keith, this is your moment.
What color is it?
Yeah, what color?
You're seeing rainbows.
Black and
The
white.
red marker isn't working anymore. Okay, so with reading, accuracy plus practice equals automaticity. That means there is never any point in focusing on speed, because as long as you are promoting and teaching your students ways of being precisely accurate, and you give them plenty of opportunities to practice and succeed at that, then their speed will naturally come up while they're developing good habits, rather than try to fast forward while they're developing habits that allow them to read faster, but maybe not that. But many teachers are not given the knowledge needed to help beginning readers read accurately. And so when students aren't developing the automaticity, which leads to fluency, that they need, then they try to work on getting that speed up by focusing on speed. It can help in a backdoor kind of way, but it's not the front door way that is the.
Can it hinder though?
Practice,
Yes, it can also hinder.
Okay.
practice is also a tricky one there, Dan, because you give the kids time, you give them the text, but you can't get into their head and make sure they're reading.
But there are ways of doing that.
And if they're on their computers, unless we have some way of looking and seeing who's doing what on their screen at that time, and there are ways of doing that too, we just don't have.
True, and also the level at which this is happening is usually before students would voluntarily read on anything. Like they wouldn't read on a computer or a book, so it's usually when their skills are still low enough that they're not going to go pick up a book or pick up anything that would allow them to read. But
That's about 12th grade.
oh, Lord help us. So that is actually more what I normally, that's what I do all the time. So help struggling readers with that stuff. If you want to know any more about that, the world needs to change in that way too. I think God wants it to. And I can't think of saying all of this on video. Okay, here is a picture which I gave you each as I worked hard to try and make this copy turn out well. This is as good as I could get it, as clear as I could get it. We're only going to spend a short amount of time. You can spend an entire class period doing what we're about to do with this. Have you done it with your students? Yay, okay.
I did it with some of them too.
Oh, cool, okay, so some of you have seen it before. It's very fun when you get more in-depth. I don't know how it will feel with just a quick little blitz like I'm giving you now, but will you take a look, make as many observations as you can, and tell me what you think is going on? Yes.
Can I get the joke one out of the way?
Absolutely.
Okay, it's Keith going home to clean the dishes.
It's a clean up the rubble.
The knickers. The knickers are the given.
Sorry.
Mr. Ulrich, jolly for you.
But Ulrich, we're not close enough for you to make that comment.
It's Keith walking home to do the dishes and wondering.
All right, and did you wanna say another one, or was that?
Oh, no, that was it. I just-
Okay. Ron,
Ron.
Ron,
Mr. Art.
Mr.
Artie.
Ron.
Artie.
A city or from a war zone, rubble, due to seeing a boy with a, like somebody said, knickers, whether it be, especially with the architecture, I would say World War II-ish time. And just, I'm looking at the back, architectural slash, Gothic cathedral way far away, so trying to put it in place of, yep. Yep.
Despair.
There's no structural
Despair.
steel. The
Yeah.
buildings date back to the 1900s,
Yes.
19th century. There's no structural steel in the buildings, so the buildings date back to multi-story buildings. They would be somewhere after the 1890s, but before the 1930s. The closeness and proximities of the buildings put them outside of the United States. And the roof systems would have been made out of wood, but they're not even present in the destruction, which means it probably burned. And because of the dismantling of the buildings, it was bombed and exploded. It didn't fall through decay.
This is so exciting. Okay, great. Your expert ability to observe this particular scene helped fast forward that whole
Cast
process.
iron.
Probably people without such
Yeah.
expertise could have gotten to those things within a 40-minute class. So that was fantastic. Thank you.
But what about the poor little kid looking for his family and there's no other
We
family?
don't know these
Oh,
guys.
this is a perfect teaching opportunity.
for school.
Kathy,
He's coming home from school
Mrs.
looking for his
Mrs. Pike.
family. You can call me Kathy, it's
What,
okay.
what makes you think, or what makes you say that he is looking for his family?
It's just the story I made up. There's no one with him. He's
No.
got a backpack on. He may
The
have packed
destruction.
everything that he had. He may already know
Years
that his
after.
family is gone.
This isn't book club.
And listen, I let you do math problems in your head, mister. I've never done addition in my married life.
She
And
knows
I'm
you well
friends
enough
with
to
your
say
wife,
that.
I can check.
Mrs. Pike, keep going. So
So
he may be looking for his family because there's no one else in the picture. He's
And
wearing a backpack,
the
so.
sadness is that odds are, looking at the rest of the picture and Steve's detailed analysis of what happened there, he's not going to find anyone else. But then he's gonna go through all of this and there's hope still.
The bombing wasn't recent. It was a long time since the bombing.
It's my story. There's hope in the background. We're going to find something hopeful. I'm hoping it's God, because it looks like a church back there.
Beautiful. All right.
I think he's purposeful though.
Yeah, because he's also
He
dressed
looks like
up.
he knows where he's going.
Well, he's also
What-
dressed
what-
up.
He's trying not
Watch
to
me
fall
do
down the
this.
stairs.
What can I point to? What do you see that helps you say he looks purposeful?
His gait, he's not looking around, he's looking forward.
Okay.
And he
He's
seems to have
casual,
a
he has
directional
his pocket.
purpose from.
He's got a backpack.
With all the destruction.
And he's, yeah,
That's his
he's
jacket,
neat,
isn't it?
tidy,
Yep.
as if he is supposed to
Oh, wait,
go
you're right.
someplace.
Yeah.
Coming from someplace where he has to be presentable.
Okay.
His mother is never gonna let him walk through that part of town though.
Right, but he's walking down the middle of it, so he's not hiding.
He's headed straight.
He's taking a shortcut.
He's not smoking.
Only you and I would
Not
come
a
up with
bit,
that
not
more.
during or prior.
So, you can go on and on like that. I want to point out to you that what I was requiring verbally was support for a conclusion, support for an inference made, evidence for a point, which is exactly what needs to be done in many essays. Make a point and support it. And in this case, it had to be
Analyze
with
it,
things
don't
that I
forget
can
to
point
analyze
to, but the students can very easily see connections. If they hear you say all the time, well, what can I point to? Then what is concrete in this sentence that supports the point you make? Where could I find that fact? What's your backup? What's your support for your point? So with more time, so there's lots of studies on this too, but what they have shown is that it takes at least seven or eight times of this kind of study over a class period before students begin to transfer it to their critical thinking in other ways. But actually, if you think about it, 7 or 8 class periods to actually help students begin to think critically and provide support for evidence in their own speaking, provide support for conclusions in their own speaking, is a short amount of time. Those are skills that people work on trying to teach for years. You know that if you teach seniors, you're still trying to teach some of them, even though other teachers have been trying to do it the whole time. So it's a worthwhile investment. This is where coordination very soon here with other people, well, we'll go to that in 1 minute. Here is one more picture. Will you just take one and pass it on? This is from this newspaper picture. So I'm just showing you that part. I'm kind of just speeding my process along right now. I wouldn't show the students this first. Yes.
What do you call this activity?
Visual thinking strategies.
Just visual
Yes.
thinking strategy?
Yes, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
It's on the back.
It's on the back of
handout.
this. It's on the back of this handout.
Just so you get a chance to see the color version.
Everybody get one?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking it out.
Hey, all Rich, it's on. I'm just letting you know right now it's on.
What it is? Sorry, that's fine.
Oh, thanks.
You found this new prank.
It's okay.
You least expect it, you don't expect it. 'Cause it ain't gonna happen then.
Okay, what's going on in this
Fear
picture?
not, Bill, it's just
Reverse psychology there. I sense that.
It's this kid 10 years later, nothing's gotten any better.
What makes you say that?
Well,
Provide
he's living in the same neighborhood.
It's a lot larger.
Someone's taking his backpack.
So it's a
Ooh,
tank.
where do you see everybody's script? Oh, cool, okay. I have no.
Middle East. It looks like a person from, because there's palm trees.
Yes.
Somewhat contemporary clothing on there.
It's a slum area with a sheet metal, so it's like a ghetto kind of area.
Right cover the building.
Is it tree or stone square?
Tree or big room. In the, on the wall.
Who's your most
It's like kind of.
Judging from the
facing
blood
away.
splatter,
Blood.
if that is what it is.
Well, because it's a.
This
Show
looks
me where
scarier.
the blood is splattered.
Yeah, because that's what we're talking about, blood splatter.
Blood splatter.
We watched
Oh,
CSI.
it could be on this, okay,
Yeah.
it actually could be, yeah.
Somebody's painting.
Gotta look at the backside, Bill.
Somebody's doing abstract art.
Oh, and if you look at the photo,
Oh, this one's a lot easier.
Caitlin, if you look at the photo credit, Rod may have gotten some
We're even.
photo credit too.
Is it not cut off of yours?
No, Mohammed,
Oh,
Rodbro,
hopefully it's cut off of every other person's. Does anybody else have a photo
Or you
credit
can
at the
see the
bottom?
writing
I
in
do.
the background.
at the
Oh,
very,
that
no,
was just
underneath
my
the
accidental
credit.
Not cutting enough. I didn't mean to leave that on there.
Nice taper.
Have you got it, Rod?
At least they're big.
Okay, so I hope that you can imagine with a little bit more depth of this, we could then compare these two. And you could go whatever direction would be relevant. What Kathy was starting to do is the
Tell a
direction I'm
story.
sort of going to have you go just for very briefly. If you pull out the readings again from today, the first reading is from 2 Corinthians. Take a look at your pictures while I'm reading this reading to you, and I want you to tell me whatever line from this reading or whatever phrase or sentence from this reading you think matches well one of these pictures and exemplifies it in some way. Paul, an apostle of Christ Jesus, by the will of God, and Timothy, our brother, to the church of God that is at Corinth, with all the holy ones throughout Achaia. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all encouragement, who encourages us in every affliction, so that we may be able to encourage those who are in any affliction with the encouragement with which we ourselves are encouraged by God. For as Christ's sufferings overflow to us, so through Christ does our encouragement also overflow. If we are afflicted, it is for your encouragement and salvation. If we are encouraged, it is for your encouragement